Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we slice through information overload to bring you the most compelling insights.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're plunging into a truly extraordinary and frankly controversial historical document. It was published back in 1857,
Right.
and it purports to reveal the hidden playbook of one of history's most, well, enigmatic and powerful organizations. We're talking about the secret instructions of the Jesuits.
It's a fascinating journey, definitely. Maybe unsettling, too, into this world where allegedly power, piety, and this unparalleled strategic thinking all intertwined.
A relentless pursuit of influence, it sounds like.
That's how it's framed. This document, Secret Instructions of the Jesuits, by W.C. Brownlee, a doctor of divinity, it claims to unveil these hidden directives, the rules that supposedly guided the Society of Jesus for centuries.
So our mission today is to unpack the intricate details, the really startling claims found within this very specific text. We'll explore its historical context, dive into the arguments the author makes for its authenticity.
Which is a whole story in itself.
Exactly. And most importantly, lay bare the explicit instructions it alleges were secretly followed by the Jesuits. Now, to be clear, this isn't about validating historical fact outside of the document itself.
No, that's crucial.
It's about understanding what this particular source says, the vivid picture it paints, right? And the deeply provocative insights it offers into how people back then perceived power and manipulation.
It's a window into that mindset.
So prepare to have your understanding of ambition, maybe organization itself, stretched to its limits. This 1857 publication, it came out of an era of intense religious and political feeling.
A real pressure cooker.
Right. So we're looking strictly at the author's interpretation and the claims made within this specific historical text. What it says happened. Okay, let's begin at the very beginning. With the originator of the Jesuit order, Ignatius Loyola, as he's described in our source, his story is, well, quite a transformation, isn't it?
It is indeed. The text tells us Loyola started as a soldier. He was wounded in 1521, serving Ferdinand V of Spain. And during his confinement, the story goes, he seemingly only had access to the lives of the saints.
That was it. Just that book.
According to Brownlee, yeah. And this, he claims, was the pivotal point. It turned Loyola's mind from, quote, military enthusiasm to ghostly fanaticism.
Oh, fanaticism. Strong word.
Very. The source even describes him assuming the name and office of Knight of the Virgin Mary, pursuing a course of the wildest and most extravagant adventures. And he compares him to a good type of the future Don Quixote.
So a soldier turned spiritual zealot, almost a caricature in this telling. But how did this intense personal transformation lead to founding a whole new order, the Society of Jesus, in 1540? That's only 11 years after, as the author points out, the Christian church has sort of split and the name Protestants emerged.
Well, the author claims Loyola went to Pope Paul III. He submitted his plan, his constitution for this new monastic order, and he assured the Pope that the whole framework was given to him by an immediate revelation from heaven.
A direct line to God, essentially.
That's the claim presented. The source suggests Loyola felt this claim was necessary, quote, to be on a footing of equality with the other orders. Brownlee notes that, according to a Dr. Stillingfleet he cites, every order of monks and nuns in Rome has been ordained by visions and inspirations from heaven.
Ah, so playing by the established rules of divine justification, in a way.
It was presented as a strategic move, yeah.
Yeah.
Legitimizing this new thing by linking it to divine will and existing precedents.
Okay, but despite these divine claims, the Pope, according to the document, hesitated at first. He wasn't immediately sold.
Right.
So what ingenious move did Loyola allegedly make then? How did he overcome this papal reluctance?
Well, Loyola, sensing this hesitation, conveniently had, as Brownlee puts it, another convenient inspiration. He added a fourth vow, on top of the usual three, chastity, poverty, obedience. This new fourth vow was absolute subservience to the Pope.
Absolute subservience. That sounds intense.
It wasn't a minor addition. It meant doing whatever he enjoined and go on any service he wished and into any quarter of the globe, unquestioning obedience anywhere, anytime.
Wow.
And the source explicitly states that Pope Paul III could not resist this, especially, with the Reformation happening, which had, quote, convulsed his seat and shaken his empire to the foundation.
So this vow made the order uniquely useful to the Pope right when he needed loyal agents most.
Exactly. It's presented as a perfectly timed strategic masterstroke. It aligned the order directly with the Pope's immediate political and religious needs, and that led to its confirmation and as the source puts it, being sent out to invade the world.
Invade the world. That's a dramatic shift from traditional monasticism, isn't it? How did this new mission fundamentally differ from what other monastic orders were doing, according to this document?
The text draws a really sharp contrast. Traditional monks, it says, profess to retire from the world and macerate the body. Focus inward.
Right, asceticism.
But the Jesuits, as depicted here, set out to conquer the world to the Pope. Their goal wasn't personal holiness for its own sake. Instead, their stated aim was, quote, an universal dominion over the souls and bodies of men, to bind them as vassals to the Pope's chariot wheels.
Universal dominion. That's
Yeah.
ambitious.
Hugely. The document dramatically describes them as the soldiers of the Pope. They knew no law but the will of their general, no mode of worship but the Pope's dictate, no church but themselves. They were, in this portrayal, basically an army with a singular worldly purpose: people conquest.
And right from the get-go, Brownlee's source paints a picture of extreme methods. Really remarkable flexibility in how they approached conversion. What are some of the most striking examples given, especially, say, with the Chinese?
The document claims they were extremely indulgent to their heathen converts. And for the Chinese, it alleges a truly shocking allowance was made. They allowed them to continue the worship of their ancestors.
Seriously, ancestor worship.
That's the claim. The only requirement, according to the source, was to give to these deceased Chinese the names of the Roman saints, such as St. Peter, St. Paul, St. Mary.
So just slap a saint's name on the ancestor shrine.
Essentially, the text states these the converts had on their lips while their heart's homage was given to their ancestors. And Brownlee's stunning conclusion from this is that they converted them by stealth and saved them by deception and idolatry. It's presented as a stark example of the ends justifying the means, even if it meant compromising core religious beliefs as the author understood them.
That completely reframes the idea of conversion. It suggests an extraordinary level of pragmatism, or maybe cynicism. What does the document imply was the thinking behind such a flexible approach?
It implies a philosophy where gaining nominal allegiance, getting people in the books, sort of superseded doctrinal purity.
Yeah.
And the text offers even more astonishing anecdotes when discussing their dealings with indigenous populations.
Like where?
Among the Indians of our Great West, the source alleges they not only suppressed the truths of Christianity, but devised the most infamous fictions and falsehoods.
Such as?
Well, the document recounts one Jesuit reportedly telling a native chief that Jesus Christ was just such a one as he would have admired. He was a mighty chief, a valiant and victorious warrior who had in the space of 3 years scalped an incredible number of men, women, and children.
Scalped Jesus Christ.
That's the shocking claim reported in the source. And another Jesuit, this time in the East Indies, allegedly produced a pedigree of himself in which he clearly demonstrated that he was a lineal descendant of Brahma.
Descended from Brahma, good grief.
These are presented as blatant, almost cartoonish deceptions, illustrating the alleged lengths the Jesuits would go to gain influence, completely twisting their message to fit the audience's existing beliefs or, well, prejudices.
So this initial sketch, this origin story as told by Brownlee, it sets a really powerful tone. It depicts a deeply strategic, sometimes shockingly manipulative foundation for the society. What's the overarching picture painted here?
Ultimately, what this document asserts is that the Society of Jesus, from its very inception, wasn't conceived as the traditional monastic order at all. It was, in this view, a meticulously engineered instrument of papal conquest, one willing to employ radical deception and moral flexibility to achieve universal dominion. That's a truly unprecedented ambition for a religious order. It immediately positions them as something different, something potentially dangerous, defined by its ambition, its adaptability, and its alleged willingness to compromise doctrine for practical gain. This early portrayal really sets up the whole narrative of calculated deception that the rest of the text aims to unveil.
Okay, so Brownlee's document really emphasizes that, unlike other papal orders, the Jesuits were structured under a, quote, strict military and despotic government. How did this unique, seemingly absolute command structure actually function, according to our source?
Well, the text details that Loyola, remember the old wounded soldier, based the order's laws and discipline directly on his military experience.
Makes sense, given his background.
Right, so like a military chief, their general was chosen for life. And to him, every member was sworn on the cross to yield an implicit obedience. The description is pretty stark. The Jesuit, like the soldier, yielded his body and soul and wishes and desires to his general.
Body and soul.
That's the language used. The individual, according to the source, had no right to consult a friend or exercise even his own judgment. The general's will was his will. He must go wherever their chief, residing at Rome, should dictate, be it into Asia or Africa or any portion of the globe.
No questions asked.
Exactly. The document even states he put no questions. He asked no reasons. The general was his sovereign god. He sailed with sealed orders. It paints this picture of an organization built on unquestioning, total submission to a single unseen authority, a kind of human machine.
An almost chilling portrayal of absolute subservience. But then the document takes an even darker turn. It suggests this obedience extended to truly shocking acts, which the author presents as directly sanctioned, even required. What exactly does the text claim a Jesuit must do under the general's command?
This is indeed where the accusations become really chilling. The document explicitly states a Jesuit must teach, not what he believed to be right. He had no choice of his faith. He must believe as his general regulated his heart and soul and conscience.
Wow.
And then it says he must do any deed enjoined on him, asking no questions. He was not to shrink from any deed of blood.
Any deed of blood, that's incredibly strong language.
It removes any personal moral agency, you see,
Yeah.
placing it entirely on the general's command. A truly despotic vision, as the author sees it. The individual is just an instrument.
And this is where the historical accusations really explode in this text. What specific examples does the source provide of these alleged deeds of blood and political interference that flowed from this obedience?
The document claims Jesuits were commanded to send the Spanish Armada to overthrow England, to blow up the English Parliament with gunpowder. That's the gunpowder plot connection.
Oh, the Garnet, right.
Yes. Garnet, the Jesuit chief, who the text claims was later sainted as Saint Henry in Spain. It also alleges they were enjoined to assassinate King Henry of France, or shoot the Prince of Orange, or even poison Pope Ganganelli, which we'll come back to.
So regicide, assassination attempts.
And more. It also alleges they enjoined Charles IX to perpetrate the St. Bartholomew Massacre and Louis XIV to revoke the Edict of Nantes and cover fair France with blood and havoc and fill the nations with the lamentations of her miserable exiles. The text notes that if a Jesuit failed, he tried again and again, stopping not short of his aim until it was accomplished, or he died on the rack like the assassin of the King of France, or was, well, sainted like Garnet.
These are incredibly grave charges, presented as fact in this text. They paint a picture of an organization willing to use violence and political subversion on a massive scale.
That's certainly the picture Brownlee is painting, yes. A secret army waging covert war across Europe.
But for such an organization to wield that kind of influence, it must also have had significant financial power, right? Especially over the papacy it supposedly served. What does the document say about the general's control of funds and, maybe even more shockingly, his alleged sway over the Pope himself?
Well, the general, the source states, didn't just command absolute obedience. He also had the uncontrolled right of receiving and dispersing their immense funds. He also, quote, made every nomination to office and removed anyone he chose without assigning any reasons to anyone. Total financial and administrative control.
Okay, but power over the Pope, how did that allegedly work?
The document makes this astonishing assertion. For although nominally under the Pope's power, the society exercised an unlimited power over the cardinals and even over the Pope. Money and Jesuit craft overcame all and enslaved all.
Money and craft enslaved the Pope.
That's the claim. The text uses a vivid analogy stating, they did what the kings of France did to the Pope. They flattered and caressed the successor of St. Peter, while they tied up his hands and chained him in his chair of St. Peter. It portrays a society that, despite its vow of subservience, effectively controlled the papacy through wealth and, well, cunning manipulation.
So the general was sovereign even over the Pope in this portrayal, and the internal structure of the society itself sounds like a finely tuned, almost omnipresent machine, according to this document, like a global surveillance network.
Indeed. The whole society was divided by their general into 37 provinces, and what's particularly telling is the claim that a register lay before him, containing the character of each novice and of each fully initiated member. His talent, his tact, his activity, his defects, everything relating to him.
A file on everyone.
Pretty much. This, the source claims, gave the general an accurate view of each instrument in each field, ready for every emergency in task. It speaks to an almost totalitarian level of internal surveillance and control, ensuring every single member was optimally deployed for the society's strategic aims.
This level of detail in their internal organization, this surveillance, it brings us to that really memorable quote, doesn't it, from Brewster's Edinburgh Encyclopedia. It just perfectly encapsulates the alleged ubiquity and, frankly, the insidious nature of their influence, as described here.
Yes, it's a powerful image. The history writer in Brewster's is quoted saying, "The Jesuits had missionaries for the villages and martyrs for the Indians. Thus, a peculiar energy was imparted to the operations of this most singular society." And then the famous line, "The Jesuits are a naked sword whose hilt is at Rome, but its blade is everywhere, invisible until its stroke is felt."
Invisible until its stroke is felt. Wow.
Yeah. What's fascinating here is how this document frames their pervasive influence. It's not presented as a visible, overt power structure. It's something hidden everywhere, striking when you least expect it. It projects this worldview where the society's ambition extended to covert control, achieved through absolute obedience, vast resources, and a strategic application of force, both direct and indirect. A hidden hand shaping world events.
Okay, so this pervasive reach, this invisible blade, as the quote says, it extended deeply into society, particularly, according to our source, into education. What was their alleged strategy there? How did they aim to shape future generations?
The text claims they soon found their way into schools and sought most anxiously to gain the education of children, especially of Protestants.
Targeting Protestant children specifically.
That's what Brownlee asserts. And their explicit maxim, as cited in the document, was a very, very long game strategy. Quote, "Give us the education of the children of this day, and the next generation will be ours. Ours in maxims, in morals, and religion."
That's chilling, if true. Control the schools, control the future.
It suggests a fundamental understanding, at least as perceived by the author, that controlling the minds of the young is the absolute surest way to control the future direction of society.
A truly foundational, generations-spanning strategy. Did they stop at primary education, though? Or did their alleged infiltration extend further into higher academic and even religious institutions?
Not at all, according to this source. It states they found their way into colleges, into theological institutions, as at this day in Oxford and other places.
Oxford.
That's the claim in this 1857 text. It highlights this alleged systemic infiltration at all levels of learning, aiming to shape intellectual and religious thought directly from within. They even, according to the document, pretended to be converted and to enter into Protestant churches.
Pretended to convert.
Yes, being found, it says, in the Reformed Church in France and Holland, where they allegedly caused grievous and fatal divisions by false doctrine. This is presented as a deliberate tactic. So discord, weaken rival religious groups from the inside out.
And the text even includes that intercepted letter you mentioned to back up one particularly striking claim about their methods. This really drives home the alleged deceptive nature of their infiltration tactics.
Yes. The source cites a letter, supposedly from the Jesuit confessor of the King of England to the Jesuit confessor of Louis XIV of France. In it, he apparently stated how admirably our people imitate the Puritan preachers.
Wow. So mimicking their opponents.
This document presents that as clear evidence of their hidden infiltration, even into the ranks of the old English Puritans, adopting the outward appearance, the style, the very mannerisms of their opponents to gain trust and influence from within. Kind of religious espionage.
The level of adaptation they allegedly exhibited, just for the sake of gaining ascendancy, it's also quite striking in the text. It suggests this chameleon-like ability to blend into almost any environment.
The source claims they adapted themselves to all kinds of character. It specifies this remarkable adaptability.
Right.
With the Jew, they were Jews to gain their object.
Yeah.
With the infidel, they were skeptics. To the immoral, they were the most liberal and indulgent until they gained the absolute ascendancy over them.
So be whatever you need to be to get control.
That's the implication. This, the text explains, allowed them to found their way into kings' courts and queens' boudoirs, providing confessors to the chief crowned heads of Europe. England, France, and the Waldenses, under the House of Savoy, are specifically cited as places that felt this to their cost.
This paints a vivid picture of extreme moral flexibility, just sacrificing principles for perceived strategic advantage.
It certainly does. The Abbé Boileau is quoted in the text as saying, with great truth, that they are a sort of people who lengthen the creed and shorten the moral law.
Lengthen the creed, shorten the moral law. Catchy.
It suggests a pragmatic, almost ruthlessly results-oriented approach to morality, as presented by the author. Their alleged willingness to wink at vices where property and power were to be gained by a show of morals really underscores this supposed flexibility. It portrays them as masters of ethical compromise for the sake of gaining power.
And it wasn't just men operating in these spheres of influence, was it? The source mentions female Jesuits, indicating an even broader, more comprehensive approach to infiltration than one might initially think.
Correct. The text describes these female Jesuits as pursuing the same course with the young and tender sex, making vast numbers of converts to their sect. These Jesuit nuns, the document alleges, were different from traditional nuns.
How so?
Well, it says they did not waste their energies and exhaust their pious emotions in dungeon cells and the graded prisons. No, they were out-of-door missionaries.
Out in the world.
Exactly. They were known by names like Sisters of Charity or Sisters of the Heart, names the author calls sentimental and imposing. The document then dramatically calls them female soldiers invading the sanctity of families, carrying captive silly women laden with iniquity and ignorance.
Female soldier.
Yeah, it continues. They fought among females, as did their desperate male brothers among the males in the community. This reveals the alleged comprehensiveness of their methods, encompassing all segments of society, even gender roles, ensuring in this portrayal that no corner was left untouched in their purported quest for total influence.
Okay, so this organization, depicted as so insidious, so pervasive, it certainly gained power rapidly, according to Brownlee. But the source also details these periods of intense pushback, even outright abolition. What was their growth trajectory like, according to the document, leading up to these conflicts?
The text highlights their truly astonishing growth. In 1540, remember, Loyola had only 10 disciples.
Just 10.
But just 48 years later, in 1608, they had grown to an, quote, appalling number of nearly 11,000.
11,000 in less than 50 years? That's explosive growth.
It is. And before the English Revolution of 1688, the document states they had obtained the direction of the schools, academies, colleges, and universities in all the European Catholic continent. Furthermore, they had the address, the skill, to have their members installed, confessors to the kings of Spain, France, Portugal, Naples, Austria, Sicily, and the regal Duke of Savoy, and every leading prince and noble in these kingdoms.
So embedded at the highest levels across Catholic Europe.
It portrays a swift and seemingly unstoppable ascent to positions of immense influence.
But as the author claims, their wild, ambitious, and bloody career ultimately raised innumerable enemies. Who were some of their fiercest opponents mentioned in the text, and what was the impact of this opposition?
The Jansenists are specifically named as their deadly enemies in France, and the author attributes significant impact to Pascal's provincial letters.
Ah, Pascal, famous philosopher.
Right. The text says his letters were written with inimitable good humor and in the most elegant style, and they attracted all scholars and politicians to their dangerous morality, their atrocious principles in politics. Brownlee asserts that these letters had inflicted a blow on the Jesuits from which they never recovered.
So public exposure through literature was a key weapon against them, in this view.
That's how it's presented, yes. This literary exposure was seen as a critical factor in their eventual temporary downfall, at least in France.
And this widespread opposition ultimately led to their official dissolution in several countries. What were the severe, really sweeping reasons assigned by the French Parliament for taking such a drastic action back in 1762?
The French Parliament, when dissolving and abolishing the order in 1762, assigned truly damning reasons. The document states their doctrines were found to, quote, destroy the law of nature. They break all the bonds of civil society by authorizing theft, lying, perjury, the utmost licentiousness, murder, criminal passions, and all manner of sins.
Wow, that covers pretty much everything.
It's incredibly comprehensive. Furthermore, the Parliament concluded that these doctrines, moreover, root out all sentiments of humanity. They overthrow all governments, excite rebellion, and uproot the foundation and practice of religion. And they substitute all sorts of superstitions, irreligion, blasphemy, and idolatry.
So the charge was basically that they were a threat to civilization itself, both secular and religious.
Exactly. Those are sweeping condemnations, alleging that the Jesuits, as an organization, posed a fundamental threat to both civil society and core religious principles.
Though they're incredibly sweeping condemnations, portraying the society as this force of utter corruption. Did other nations follow France's lead after that?
Yes, the text states their overthrow in Spain was sudden and complete. Happened on March 31st, 1767, at midnight.
Midnight raids.
Apparently, a strong cordon of troops surrounded the 6 colleges of Jesuits in Madrid, seized the fathers, and before morning had them conveyed on the way to Cartagena, and the same prompt measures were pursued towards every other college in the kingdom 3 days later.
A coordinated takedown.
Absolutely. The author emphasizes the sweeping nature of these actions. In a word, kingdom after kingdom follow up the same course of measures against these intolerable enemies of God and of men. The source even provides a staggering statistic. They had been banished either partially or entirely no less than 39 times from the different kingdoms and states of Europe.
39 times. That's persistent opposition.
It speaks volumes about the level of fear and animosity they apparently generated, at least according to this account.
And even the Pope himself abolished them at one point, didn't he? With a chilling prediction, according to this text, that really suggests the extreme measures the society was believed capable of, even against the highest authority in their own church.
That's right. In 1773, Pope Clement XIV, also known as Ganganelli, abolished the order entirely, as a sect no longer to be endured by man.
Strong words from a pope.
Very. The text then quotes him directly as saying, "It will cost me my life," said he, "but I must abolish this dangerous order."
And did it, according to the source.
The source claims it absolutely did. He died of poison within a few days of the time thus announced by their agency.
Poisoned by the Jesuits. A pope.
There's the explicit claim made in this document. His dying words, as stated here, were, "I am going to eternity, and I know for what I." This alleged act of papal assassination by the Jesuits is presented as the stark, horrifying culmination of their purported ruthlessness and power, willing to eliminate even the head of their own church to protect their interests.
But the story doesn't end there. Despite the papal condemnation, the alleged regicide, the multiple expulsions, our source describes an almost incredible restoration, a resurrection of the order.
Yes, it's quite the comeback story, as told here. Despite being dissolved and abolished, the text claims they still kept up privately their organization. Their general apparently resided publicly in Rome during the whole interim period from 1773 to 1801.
So they never really went away.
Not according to this account. They were then restored, for political reasons, by Emperor Paul of Russia in 1801. The author interjects here saying, "This seems almost incredible, but this bad man and infamous emperor needed the support of the worst of all the Roman Catholic orders."
Ouch. Strong opinion there.
Very. The King of Sardinia followed suit in 1804, apparently for similar reasons.
And then the Pope himself, Pope Pius VII, restored them to full power in 1814. This brings up that fascinating point about papal infallibility, which the source doesn't shy away from using as a critique, does it?
No, it leans right into it. In 1814, Pope Pius VII restored them to their full powers and prerogatives in all particulars. He called on all papal princes in Europe, the powers in South America, and all popish establishments to afford them protection and encouragement. Why? Because they were the Pope's right arm and the superior and most successful instruments of extending Catholicism and pulling down all heresies.
The Pope's right arm again.
Right back in favor. And what's particularly highlighted is Pius VII's assertion that his act is above the recall or revision of any judge with whatever power he may be clothed, basically defying all the powers of all civil governments on the earth.
And this act of restoration, coming from an allegedly infallible pope, directly contradicts the abolition by another supposedly infallible pope, Clement XIV. The source really hammers that contradiction.
It does, and quite pointedly. Brownlee highlights this paradox directly. The revival of the Order of Jesuits by Pope Pius VII in the face of the bull of another equally infallible pope who had condemned them and abrogated them as a most pestiferous and infamous sect exhibits a poor specimen of papal unity and infallibility.
So using their own doctrine against them, in a sense.
Exactly. The source concludes this historical overview by quoting the London Christian Observer, stating that Jesuitism is a public nuisance, and anyone unleashing it is chargeable with high treason against the common interests and happiness of the human family. What's fascinating here is how the document uses this contradiction, these cyclical patterns of condemnation and restoration, not just to chronicle events. It uses them to discredit the papal system itself, portraying the enduring power and perceived threat of the society through their very ability to rise, phoenix-like, from the ashes of widespread condemnation.
Okay, so this whole historical sketch, this dramatic rise and fall and rise again, it sets the stage for the real core of our deep dive today. The document itself, the secret instructions. How, according to this source, did these alleged secrets, this very codex of the laws of Jesuitism, supposedly come to light? It wasn't easy, was it?
No, definitely not. The author notes that the secret instructions formed a codex of the laws of Jesuitism. But, and this is key, they were not allowed to be made known even to many members of a certain class of Jesuits. The society in this portrayal operated in these distinct layers of secrecy, different levels of initiation into their true aims and methods.
Layers, you say. How precisely were these layers described in the document? What kind of members populated each level of this alleged secrecy?
Brownlee claims there were, at the core, the bold, daring, bad men to achieve desperate deeds and take off their enemies by steel or bullet or poisoned chalice. These knew something that others did not.
The enforcers, basically.
That's the implication.
Yeah.
Then there were disguised agents, men in mask, who also possessed knowledge not imparted to the rank and file. Following them were the shrewd, crafty, courteous, and most polished men who courted nobles, insinuated themselves into the favor of princes, kings, and rich widows, and young heirs and heiresses. These had their instructions from their general, sort of smooth operators.
But then there were those who were deliberately kept in the dark. And this is where the alleged deception becomes really apparent, according to the author. This seems like a crucial point for the document's claims of authenticity, this idea of calculated ignorance.
Yes, absolutely crucial. This is where the alleged deception truly becomes clear. The text describes fine scholars, decent, steady, serious, moral men who were not at all let into the secret of certain instructions.
The good Jesuits, so to speak.
Exactly. These men, the source says, were sent out as traps to captivate the serious, the unsuspecting, the religious. They taught that the society mingled in no politics, sought no riches, kept strictly their vow of poverty. Their sole object, these apparently honest Jesuits proclaimed, was, by the help of heaven, to convert the world and put down Protestantism and all heresies.
So they genuinely believed that.
That's the key. The source asserts that because these men were not initiated, they could, with an honest conscience, deny and even swear on the cross that no such instructions were ever given or ever received. The initiated Jesuits, the ones pulling the strings, would then push forward these decent, amiable, moral, and trustworthy men to declare to the world that no such rules ever existed.
Plausible deniability built right into the system.
Precisely. This, the author says, throws light upon the mystery and contradictory statements. It provides this built-in mechanism where genuine ignorance on the part of some members served as a shield for the alleged activities of the inner circle.
So a built-in mechanism for plausible deniability using genuinely ignorant members as a shield. How then, according to the source, were these supposedly hidden rules eventually discovered and, more importantly, recognized as authentic? It wasn't immediate, right?
No. The document states these secret instructions were not discovered fully to the Christian public until some 50 years after the dissolution and expulsion of the society. So quite a delay. However, it argues that all ranks of men, papal and Protestant, who had studied the Jesuit movement's intrigues and conspiracies were intimately acquainted with their practices.
So people already had a sense of how they operated.
That's the argument. Hence, when the Book of Secret Instructions was finally discovered and published, everybody at once saw the evidence of its authenticity. They had been long familiar with their conspiracies and practices. Here was the exact platform and model of all their actings.
Like finding the blueprint after seeing the building.
Exactly the analogy the text uses. It compares it to an architect's model on paper, corresponding perfectly with the finished house. The author claims it was useless for the Jesuits to deny them, given that their cunning craft and deed and atrocities prescribed by these rules were blazoned in the memories of princes, nobles, ministers, and people. Their actions, allegedly, spoke for themselves and matched the instructions.
Okay, but beyond just this anecdotal recognition, it fits what we already suspected. What concrete evidence for their authenticity does the source present? Are there earlier mentions or physical copies cited?
Yes, several key pieces are highlighted. As far back as 1624, the University of Paris apparently charged the Jesuits with being governed by secret laws, which were neither allowed by kings nor sanctioned by parliaments.
So accusations existed long before the text was found.
Right. And a Roman Catholic bishop of Angelopolis wrote in 1666 that the superiors of the Jesuits do not govern them by the rules of the Church, but by certain secret instructions and rules, which are known only to those superiors. Then the critical discovery, according to the text, occurred during those civil prosecutions in France involving merchants and Jesuits in Martinico. That case made their official constitutions public. But the Secreta Monita, the secret instructions, were found maybe 50 years later.
And who supposedly wrote them?
The text claims they were drawn up by Laudez and Aquaviva, who were Loyola's immediate successors as general of the order.
And the physical proof. Actual manuscripts. The document details those as well, including that incredibly self-referential instruction about denial, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. The source points to a manuscript copy located in the British Museum, printed in Venice way back in 1596. This copy apparently contains the secret instructions at the end, entered, as the author speculates, no doubt by some leading and fully initiated Jesuit for his own use. And right at its close, there's this earnest caution and an injunction that is truly remarkable.
What does it say?
Quote, "Let them be denied to be the rules of the Society of Jesus, if ever they shall be imputed to us."
Wow, deny everything, built right in.
It suggests a preemptive strategy for denial built right into the alleged instructions themselves. Then, the source says the first copy was discovered in the Jesuit college at Paderborn in Westphalia when Duke Christian of Brunswick seized the college and gave its library to the Capuchins.
Who were not exactly friends of the Jesuits.
Right. So the Capuchins found the text and made the discovery public. A second copy was later found in Prague. And both of these copies, according to Brownlee, also had the preface containing that same injunction. If these rules fall into the hands of strangers, they must be positively denied to be the rules of the society.
There's even that story about the bookseller John Schipper, right? Which really underscores the alleged attempts by the Jesuits to suppress this document once it started circulating.
Yes, that's in there too. John Schipper, a bookseller from Amsterdam, apparently bought a copy in Antwerp and reprinted it. When the Jesuits found out, they demanded it back. A Jesuit in Amsterdam, upon hearing it was the secret instructions, reportedly shrugged up his shoulders and, knitting his brow, said that he saw no remedy but denying that this piece came from the society.
Just deny it.
But then, the author claims the Reverend Fathers, however, thought it more advisable to purchase the whole edition, which they largely did, except for some few copies, which allowed it to be reprinted later. A suppression attempt, essentially.
And the weight of academic and church endorsement, as presented by the author, further bolstered the document's claims of authenticity in the eyes of its proponents.
Right. Dr. Compton, who was the Bishop of London, published an English translation of the secret instructions back in 1669. The author, Brownlee, states that Compton's character as a scholar and divine is a sufficient guarantee that he would never have given his name and influence to sustain a work of dubious authority or calculated to mislead the public. And the 1857 edition we're looking at, our source material, is explicitly stated to be taken from a later London translation published in 1723 based on Compton's work.
So the authenticity of the secret instructions, at least as argued by this source, rests on this combination of, let's say, circumstantial evidence fitting past actions, specific historical finds like the manuscripts, and contemporary endorsements from figures like Bishop Compton, despite the Jesuit denials.
That's the case Brownlee makes, yes.
Okay, so what does the preface to the instructions themselves, the actual text within Brownlee's source, tell us about how these rules were meant to be handled? This really seems to solidify the claims of deep secrecy and calculated deception, doesn't it?
It really does. The preface, as translated in the document, opens with a pretty chilling directive. These private instructions must be carefully retained and kept by the superiors in their own hands, and by them be communicated only to a few of the professors.
Only a few. Need-to-know basis.
Absolutely. It specifies that even when they are divulged to non-professors, members not fully initiated, if it benefits the society, it must be done under the strictest ties of secrecy, and not as rules committed to writing by others, but as deduced from the experience of him that dictates. Like verbal tradition, almost.
And it even restricts where initiated members can go if they leave.
Yeah, the preface explicitly states that since many of the professors must necessarily from hence be acquainted with these private advices, the society has therefore, from their first establishment, taken care that no one who is in the secret can betake himself to any other order but that of the Carthusians. Why? Because of their strict retirement and inviolable silence, which the Holy See supposedly confirmed, basically trapping the secret knowledge within the order or sending them somewhere they can't talk.
And the ultimate chilling instruction about outright denial, which we saw mentioned in the manuscript notes, is reiterated right there in the preface itself.
Absolutely. It's spelled out clearly. The greatest care imaginable must be also taken that these instructions do not fall into the hands of strangers. For fear, out of envy to our order, they should give them a sinister interpretation. But if this, which God forbid should happen, let it be positively denied that these are the principles of the society, and such denial be confirmed by those of our members who we are sure know nothing of them.
Using the ignorant members as witnesses again.
By this means, and by confronting these with our public instructions, printed or written, our credibility will be established beyond opposition. It also advises superiors to carefully and warily inquire about any discovery by members and to dismiss him if he is suspected of incapacity to keep such important secrets. The very existence and alleged content of this preface right there in the document seems designed to validate the claims of deep secrecy and calculated deception. It shows this purported foresight to manage public perception and deny any incriminating evidence that might leak out. It's remarkably self-contained.
Okay, now let's actually open this alleged playbook itself. Let's explore the detailed methods outlined in these secret instructions for gaining power and wealth. Starting with Chapter 1, how the society must behave themselves when they begin any new foundation. What were the initial steps prescribed for infiltrating a new community?
Well, the instructions are immediately very practical and, on the surface, quite benevolent. Members are told it's of great importance to appear agreeable, to set forth the end of the society, which is described as seeking occasions of doing good to their neighbors as to themselves.
So, project an image of service.
Exactly. This translates into very specific actions. With humility, discharge the meanest offices in the hospitals, frequently visit the sick, the poor, and the prisoners, and readily and indifferently take the confessions of all. Why? That the novelty of such uncommon and diffusive charity may excite in the principal inhabitants an admiration of our conduct and forcibly draw them into an affection for us. It's basically a strategy of public service used as a means to gain trust and affection. Win hearts and minds through good deeds initially.
So, a very public, benevolent face to gain that initial acceptance. But what about money and land? Especially given the earlier claims about their immense funds, how did the instructions advise handling property acquisitions? How did they maintain an image of poverty while secretly building wealth?
The document advises extreme caution regarding property. At their first settlement, let our members be cautious of purchasing lands. But if they happen to buy such as are well situated, let this be done in the name of some faithful and trusty friend, a proxy buyer.
Hiding ownership.
Right. And to further hide assets and maintain the more colorable gloss of reality for their supposed poverty, any purchases adjacent to their colleges are to be assigned by the provincial superior to colleges at a distance. The result: it becomes impossible that princes and magistrates can ever attain to a certain knowledge what the revenues of the society amount to. It reveals this deliberate strategy of obfuscation, making their true financial holdings impossible to track.
And the instructions even specify a very particular and apparently lucrative target for these hidden funds, don't they? It's mentioned right there in Chapter 1.
Yes. Section 7 states unequivocally, let the greatest sums be always extorted from widows by frequent remonstrances of our extreme necessities.
Extorted from widows, explicitly.
That's the word used. It also mentions that only the provincial superior should know the real value of the revenues, and the main treasury back in Rome be always kept as an inviolable secret. This systematic targeting of vulnerable, often wealthy individuals, especially widows, and the absolute imperative of financial secrecy, it's a recurring theme we're going to see throughout these alleged instructions.
Okay, beyond just acquiring wealth, the document also details how to leverage influence from those who might not be rich themselves, but hold sway in other ways. What did the alleged playbook advise for working their way into and then preserving a familiarity with princes, noblemen, and other powerful figures? This seems like the core of their political influence strategy.
Yeah, Chapter 2 is all about this. The first instruction is incredibly direct and ambitious. Princes and persons of distinction everywhere must by all means be so managed that we may have their ear and that will easily secure their heart.
Let their ear get their hearts.
By which way of proceeding, all persons will become our creatures, and no one will dare to give the society the least disquiet or opposition. The goal here isn't just influence, you see. It's presented as aiming for absolute control, making these powerful individuals entirely beholden to the society.
And the methods prescribed for achieving this are quite accommodating, particularly regarding morality.
Extremely accommodating. The text states that ecclesiastical persons gain a great footing in the favor of princes and noblemen by winking at their vices and putting a favorable construction on whatever they do amiss. It even cites specific examples like contracting of marriages with their near relations and kindred.
So turn a blind eye to sin, even facilitate questionable marriages.
That's the instruction. Jesuits are told to encourage such inclinations by promising easy papal dispensations, justifying it all by the common good of mankind and the greater advancement of God's glory.
A purported willingness to compromise on religious doctrine, then, just to gain access and influence in these royal courts. And the manual even instructs on how to obtain intelligence from within the royal households themselves, ensuring they have an inside track on the most powerful individuals.
Yes, due care must be taken to curry favor with the minions and domestics of prince and noblemen, whom by a small presence and many offices of piety we may so far bias, as by means of them to get a faithful intelligence of the bent of their master's humors and inclinations. Thus will the society be better qualified to chime in with their tempers.
So using gifts and piety to essentially turn servants into informants.
It's presented as a sophisticated intelligence-gathering operation, exploiting personal relationships for strategic information.
And the use of confessors in this strategy is particularly highlighted, emphasizing moral flexibility to attract penitents, especially powerful ones.
Exactly. In directing the consciences of great men, it must be observed that our confessors are to follow the opinion of those who allow the greater latitude in opposition to that of other religious orders. Why? That their penitents, being allured with the prospect of such freedom, may readily relinquish them, and wholly depend upon our direction and counsel.
Offer easier penance, get their loyalty.
It suggests a deliberate strategy, offer more lenient interpretations of sin, thereby attracting the powerful who might find other confessors too strict, and thus making them dependent solely on the Jesuits' counsel. And the climax of this chapter, chapter 2, is really stark. Let all with such artfulness gain the ascendant over princes, noblemen, and the magistrates of every place, that they may be ready at our beck, even to sacrifice their nearest relations and most intimate friends, when we say it is for out interest and advantage. Complete control.
The alleged playbook also details how to manage the society's image when competing with other religious orders, and how to secure property, particularly from existing churches. What strategies are outlined there for asserting their superiority and acquiring assets?
Well, Jesuits are instructed to demonstrably convince princes and others in authority that our order contains the perfection of all others, excepting only their cant and outward austerity of life and dress. Basically, we're the best, minus the rough edges.
Undercutting the competition.
Right. If another order claims preeminence, Jesuits must assert theirs shines with the greatest luster in the Church of God. They are told to diligently canvass and remark the defects of other orders and then gradually publish to our faithful friends, but always with prudence and a seeming sorrow, like spreading negative gossip with feigned regret.
And particularly aggressive when it comes to rival schools.
Very aggressive. Far greater efforts must be made against those who attempt setting up schools for the education of youth in places where any of our members do the same already with honor and advantage. Princes and magistrates must be told that such rival schools, unless timely prevented, will certainly prove mill series of tumults and sedition, and that no society but ours is qualified for discharging an office of so great importance. Basically, only we can teach properly. Everyone else causes trouble.
And acquiring church property, how did they allegedly go about that?
They're told to importune bishops and prelates, persuading them to draw existing monasteries, parishes, priories, patronages, foundations of masses, and religious places into our clutches, essentially using influence to absorb the assets and positions of other religious entities.
Now, perhaps the most disturbing sections, chapters 6 and 7, describe what sounds like a chillingly comprehensive playbook for acquiring wealth, specifically from rich widows. We saw the instruction earlier, but these chapters go deep. What are the key strategies detailed here?
This is indeed a highly methodical, multifaceted approach. The instructions outline how to meticulously select the right members, older, agreeable to target these widows.
Right.
Then how to gain the widow's trust, often through flattery about the society's merits. How to isolate her from outside influences like family, suitors, or even other religious orders, often by encouraging her to set up a private chapel at home.
Keep her close, cut off others.
Exactly. And subtly manipulate her spiritual devotion and personal choices. This includes actively discouraging remarriage by finding fault with potential suitors or proposing ones she dislikes. The ultimate aim, disturbingly, is presented as systematically stripping her of her assets. This is often done through spiritual coercion, promising eternal merit, escape from purgatory, even canonization, until she eventually, quote, gives up all they have to the society and be contented to live upon such allowance as we from time to time shall think they have occasion for.
Living on an allowance from the society after giving them everything.
Wow. So, spiritual promises explicitly tied to material gain for the society. And this alleged manipulation extends to their children as well, doesn't it? Chapter 8 outlines strategies for inducing the children of these widows to embrace a religious life, often within the society itself. This is about securing the next generation's assets and influence, isn't it?
Yes, it's presented as a very long-term and, frankly, disturbingly manipulative plan aimed directly at the children. Mothers are instructed, according to this text, to treat their children harshly even from their cradles by plying them with reproofs and frequent chastisements.
Especially daughters.
Treat them harshly. Why?
To make them desire escape, potentially into a religious life. Daughters are to be denied the common dress and ornaments of their sex, promised very plentiful portions, only if they become nuns, and constantly told by their mothers about the many inconveniences attending everyone in a married state. The goal described is to make daughters tired by leading such a life with their mothers, and thus turn eagerly towards a religious state controlled by the Jesuits.
And the sons, how are they targeted?
For sons deemed fit for our turn, Jesuits are instructed to converse familiarly with them, introduce them to the college, show them everything with the best face to entice them. This includes showcasing the pleasant aspects of Jesuit life, gardens, vineyards, country seats, and villas, where those of our society pass an agreeable life. They're told of our travels into several parts of the world, of our familiarity with princes. And critically, alongside the allure, they are to be terrified with denunciations of eternal punishment, unless they accept of the heavenly invitation. Carrot and stick, essentially.
And there's even a strategy for getting sons to join against their parents' wishes.
Yes. If an only son is resistant, let no means be omitted for the bringing him over to the society and freeing him from all fear of his parents. He is to persuaded it is a call from above, and shown how acceptable a sacrifice it would be to God should he desert his parents without their knowledge or consent. If successful, he's whisked away to a remote college. If there are both sons and daughters, the plan is even more calculating. Let the daughters be first disposed of in a nunnery, and afterwards let the sons be drawn into the society when they are got into possession of their sister's effects.
Unbelievable. Consolidating the entire family fortune. Finally, Chapter 9 details of increasing the revenues of our colleges. What does this reveal about the ongoing general strategies for increasing the wealth of the society as a whole? This seems like the overarching financial goal.
Yeah, this chapter really reinforces that constant focus on wealth accumulation. It explicitly states that no one should be admitted to the last degree, the final profession of vows, so long as he shall have an expectation of any estate falling to him, unless there are other, overriding, important reasons. The primary reason given: the increase of the society must be regarded for ends known to the superiors. Wealth is presented as a key criterion for full membership and advancement.
So prioritize potential inheritances.
Seems so. Publicly, the society claims poverty, but secretly, they're instructed to possess stable goods, ensuring they are not an encumbrance upon the people. Confessors dealing with the wealthy are told to, with great seriousness, inculcate this notion that while we administer to them in divine and spiritual things, they at least should in return contribute to us of their earthly and temporal. They are instructed to never slip of receiving from them whatever is offered, and if a promise is delayed, they should prudently remind the penitent.
And what if a confessor isn't effective at this fundraising?
But should any confessors, either of noblemen or others, seem the least negligent to put in practice these rules, let him at a proper opportunity be removed and put another more fit in his room. Failure to procure funds is grounds for removal. The text even laments past failures, recounting that several young widows being snatched away by sudden death did not bequeath to us their valuable effects through the negligence of some members who did not take care to accept of them in due time. It's presented as a business failing.
It even suggests borrowing money strategically to gain assets later.
Yes, a particularly cunning method described is for superiors to borrow money on bond of some rich persons who are our friends, and when it is due, defer the payment thereof. Afterwards, let the person who lent the money, especially in time of dangerous sickness, be constantly visited and by all methods wrought upon to deliver up the bond.
Guilt them into canceling the debt.
By this means, we shall not be mentioned in the deceased's will, and yet gain handsomely without incurring the ill will of their heirs. Clever, if ruthless.
And the society could even engage in actual commerce. Trade.
Yes, that's explicitly mentioned. The society may also advantageously traffic under the borrowed names of some rich merchants, our friends, but never without a prospect of certain and abundant gain. And this may be done even to the Indies, which hitherto, by the bountiful favor of God, have furnished us not only with souls, but also plenteously supplied our coilers with wealth. So, using proxies for profitable trade, justified by divine favor. The source portrays this as an extremely detailed, multifaceted, and often ruthless approach to consolidating wealth and influence from every possible angle.
Okay, so beyond acquisition and external influence, the secret instructions, as presented here, also delve into rigorous internal discipline and how to handle those who might leave or oppose the society from within. Chapter 10 covers the private rigor of discipline. What does this reveal about their methods for internal control?
These sections outline very clearly who should be dismissed, particularly anyone who alienates devotees or friends, especially wealthy ones, from the society's churches or influence.
Don't bite the hand that feeds you. Essentially. Also, anyone who diverts alms, even to their own poor relatives, or shows a greater affection to their near relations than to the society. This last one is framed as a plain demonstration of an unmortified mind, directly contrary to the required thorough mortification. These individuals are to be discarded as enemies to the society.
But not directly, right? To avoid complaints or bad press.
Exactly. The process described is designed to force them out without making it look like an expulsion. They are not to be kicked out immediately. Instead, they are first be restrained from hearing confessions, be plagued and perplexed with exercise of the most servile offices, be obliged to perform such duties, to which it is evident they have an utter aversion, let them be removed from higher studies and honorable employments, and harassed with chapters and public censures, let them be debarred of recreations.
Make their life miserable until they quit. Till by such rigorous methods of chastisement they become impatient and murmuring against us, let them then be dismissed as persons not duly mortified, whose bad example may be pernicious to others. They're basically managed out, portrayed as spiritually unfit, not having the true spirit of the society.
And this harsh treatment extends to those who question the society's financial dealings, too.
Yes. Let such also be dismissed, who make a scruple of acquiring riches for the society, and set forth as persons too much in love with their own opinions. Any questioning of the mission, especially the financial part, is framed as individualism and lack of obedience. They are to be compelled to conform to implicit obedience. And those who show affection for other orders, the poor or their parents, are flagged early and disposed for dismission, since they are not likely to prove of any service to the society. Loyalty must be absolute and solely directed inwards.
So what happens to those who are expelled or leave under this pressure? How does the society, according to these instructions, control the narrative and neutralize any potential threat from former members who might spill secrets?
Chapter 11 is all about managing the fallout. Since dismissed members do frequently very much prejudice the society by divulging such secrets as they have been privy to, their attempts to do so must be obviated or prevented. First, before dismissal, they are to be prevailed upon to give it under their hands and swear that they never will write or speak anything to the disadvantage of the order, a kind of non-disclosure agreement sworn under oath.
What if they break that oath?
Then the superiors are instructed to keep records of their evil inclinations, failings, and vices, often gleaned from confessions, which can be produced before noblemen or prelates to prevent their promotion. Basically, blackmail material.
And then there's the active discrediting campaign.
Right. Let it be immediately published through all our colleges that such and such are dismissed, and let the general causes of their expulsion be highly aggravated. All members are advised to keep no correspondence with them. If strangers mention the dismissed person, Jesuits are instructed to unanimously affirm in every public place that the society expels none without weighty causes, spewing out as the sea all its dead carcasses. A unified front of condemnation. The text even directs members to artfully insinuated causes for the person's ill will against the Jesuits, that their ejectment may appear to the world with a more commendable grace. Spin control. And if misfortune befalls the dismissed member, their sad fate, or any untimely or miserable end they might come to, is to be industriously aggravated by members, implying its divine punishment for leaving the society. The goal stated is clear. It is altogether for the interest of the society that the dismissed should be entirely kept under. Neutralize them completely.
Chapter 12 details who should be kept and favored in the society. This essentially defines the ideal Jesuit from the society's perspective, according to this text. What are the key criteria for retention and advancement within this demanding structure?
Well, unsurprisingly, diligent laborers whose industry is equally bent on promoting the temporal as the spiritual interests of the society are always held in the greatest esteem. It explicitly mentions confessors of princes and widows, preachers, professors, and crucially, whoever are privy to these secret instructions. Knowing the secrets makes you valuable, or perhaps too dangerous to let go.
And the old members.
Even those impaired in strength and decrepit with age, if they contributed temporally in the past, are to be made use of to pry into the actions of the other domestics, acting as internal spies. And they should scarce ever be dismissed, lest we bring an ill reputation upon the society. Keeping up appearances.
What about the noble or rich recruits? How are they treated?
Those distinguished either for their parts, nobility, or riches are initially to be caressed, sent to Rome for studies, and let nothing be denied them until they formally surrender their effects to the society. But when once we have got them to do this, the instruction continues, oblige them then to mortification, like the rest. Once the money is secured, the special treatment ends.
Chapter 13 focuses on how to pick out young men to be admitted into the society and in what manner to retain them. This really builds on the earlier points about infiltrating education systems. What are the most striking aspects of this recruitment process described here?
The utmost prudence is to be used to pick young men of a good genius, an agreeable personage, and noble family, or at least such as excel in some one of these. Potential and connections are key. They're to be specially favored in Jesuit schools, prepossessed, in our favor, shown all the attractive aspects of Jesuit life we discussed earlier, the travel, the influence, the pleasant surroundings, and, again, terrified with denunciations of eternal punishment unless they accept of the heavenly invitation.
And the secrecy from parents is re-emphasized here too.
Strongly. They are to be strictly cautioned not to make the least discovery of their call to any intimate friends, not even so much as to their parents, before they are become one of us. The rationale given is interesting. This allows them freedom if they change their mind, fall off, but also gives the society leverage if they stay, preventing parental interference.
And there's that point about making the rules seem easy.
Yes. If difficulties are raised due to the tenderness of their age, recruiters are told to explain the easiness of our institution, pointing out it contains not any one rule whose non-observance would be the commission even of a venial sin. This presents a remarkably lenient, almost lax interpretation of their own rules, specifically designed, it seems, to attract young, perhaps hesitant recruits by downplaying the demands.
Chapter 14 outlines reserved cases and causes of dismission from the society, going into some disturbing detail about how certain grave offenses are handled internally, particularly those of a sexual nature or acts against the society itself.
Right. Besides certain specific sexual sins, sodomy, effeminacy, fornication, adultery, etc., the commission also of any heinous offense against the society, its honor or interest, whether through zeal or otherwise, are listed as definite causes for expulsion.
How are these handled if discovered through confession?
The protocol described is complex. If such sins are confessed sacramentally, the confessor is instructed not to grant absolution until the penitent promises to reveal the matter to the superior outside of confession. The superior then determines the course of action to the common good of the society. If the crime can somehow be smothered, kept secret, penance is given. If not, the member is to be expelled as soon as possible, though the confessor is cautioned not to inform the penitent that he is in danger of it. Keep them in the dark until the last moment.
And there's that specific troubling protocol if a woman confesses an affair with a Jesuit.
Yes. She is not to be absolved until she reveals his name to the confessor and swears never to reveal it to anyone living without our consent. This protects the Jesuit member above all else. And if two Jesuits sin carnally together, the instruction is chillingly pragmatic. The first that discovers it be retained and the other expelled. However, the retained one is then to be so mortified and plagued with such intolerable discipline that he's ostensibly forced out later anyway, preventing future risk.
And the notorious Moran clause regarding Cardinal Tolet, this highlights an alleged racial or ancestral exclusion tied directly to absolute loyalty.
The document claims that because Cardinal Tolet, allegedly of Jewish or Moorish descent, did not observe the required vow to always favor the society and confess only to Jesuits, the order obtained from the Holy See that no Moran, descended from the perfidious race of Jews and Mohammedans, who will not oblige himself to perform such a vow, should never for the future be admitted among us, but immediately expelled as a most virulent enemy, though a person of ever so great fame and reputation. A stark requirement of absolute loyalty enforced even through alleged ethnic exclusion. Chapters 15 and 16 detail conduct towards nuns and female devotees, and also how to outwardly feign a contempt of riches. What does this speak to regarding both their pervasive influence and the careful maintenance of their public image? Well, confessors are instructed to gain the affection of governesses in nunneries, not just for confessions, but to preach there too. Why? Because Rich abbesses are capable of being very serviceable to us, either through their own or the interest of their parents and friends, allowing the society to get an acquaintance and work themselves into the friendship of almost the whole city through these convent networks.
But they didn't want their own female devotees joining those convents.
No. Jesuit female devotees are to be forbidden from frequenting nunneries, lest they be most taken with that kind of life, and we thereby be balked in our expectations of what they have, meaning their expected inheritances or donations. Instead, they are encouraged to become those out-of-door missionaries we discussed, presenting it as a more edifying, publicly visible path that keeps their assets potentially available to the society.
And feigning contempt for riches. How did that work?
The text advises sometimes refusing small and trifling alms, though of such as are thoroughly attached to our interest, we must readily accept whatever they give us. This creates an appearance of not being greedy, of swallowing nothing but presents of value. It also states burials in their churches should be denied to persons of a base character, even if they offer payment, again, to prevent the world surmising that we hunt after riches by the numbers of the deceased. And generous donors, like widows who gave everything, are actually to be treated more rigorously in discipline, lest people should imagine their greater indulgence proceeds from our hopes of secular advantages. It's all about managing perception.
Finally, Chapter 17, of the methods of advancing the society. This sounds like a grand summation, the overarching strategy integrating all these tactics.
It really does outline the ultimate goals. All members are told to always act with humanity, even in things of trifling moment, or at least to have the outward appearance of doing so. For by this means, whatever confusions may arise in the world, the society of necessity will always increase and maintain its ground. Maintain stability through a veneer of decency. They are also to earnestly endeavor so to shine in their learning and good example that other religious may be eclipsed, attracting the common people, outshine the competition.
And this extends to a broader political strategy, doesn't it? Aiming for deep political entrenchment and even manipulation.
Yes, very much so. Let kings and princes be kept up in this principle that the Catholic faith, as matters now stand, cannot subsist without the civil power. This makes rulers dependent on the Church and, by extension, the Jesuits. The document then directs Jesuits. With caution and secrecy, we foment and heighten the animosities that arise among princes and great men, even to such a degree that they may weaken each other, divide and conquer.
So actively stirring up conflict.
That's the instruction. And if reconciliation seems likely between these weakened parties, the Jesuits should endeavor to be the mediators, positioning themselves as promoters of universal good in order to secure the chief benefices and preferments in the Church by way of compensation for our services. Play both sides to gain power.
The ultimate aim, as outlined here, is truly astonishing. Complete ecclesiastical and even temporal control seems to be the endgame described.
The text is explicit. The society should aim to draw all cures and canonships into our possession, aspire to abbacies and bishoprics. It even suggests it would entirely tend to the benefit of the Church that all bishoprics and even the apostolical, see the papacy itself, should be hooked into our hands, especially should His Holiness ever become a temporal prince over all.
Control the papacy, control the world, essentially.
That's the vision laid out. It promises that then a golden age will go hand in hand with a universal and lasting peace, and the divine blessing of consequence attend the Catholic Church. A Jesuit-led utopia achieved through these means, and the final stark goal is chillingly pragmatic. Finally, the society must endeavor to effect this at least, that having got the favor and authority of princes, those who do not love them at least fear them. If not loved, be feared.
And to really hammer home the alleged core morality underpinning these instructions, the book includes an appendix filled with shocking quotes attributed directly to Jesuit authors by Brownlee. He presents these as evidence of their actual ethical framework.
These are truly remarkable, even startling claims presented by the author as direct quotes. For instance, a Jesuit named Lemoyne is quoted as saying, "A Christian may deliberately discard his Christian character and act as other men in those things which are not properly Christian, allowing a separation between faith and action."
And even justifying heinous acts under divine command.
Yes, Aragona, cited as commenting on Thomas Aquinas, is alleged to have stated, "By the command of God, it is lawful to murder the innocent, to rob, and to commit all lewdness, because He is Lord of life and death and all things, and thus to fulfill His mandate is our duty." A claim that God can command acts universally seen as immoral.
and some of the most politically charged assertions, going so far as to justify treason and rebellion against non-Catholic governments.
A Jesuit writing under the name Philopater in response to an edict is quoted by Brownlee as affirming that all theologians and ecclesiastical lawyers affirm that every Christian government, as soon as they openly abandon the Roman faith, instantly are degraded from all power and dignity by human and divine right. All their subjects are absolved from the oath of fidelity and obedience which they have taken, and they may and ought to drive such a government from every Christian state as an apostate, heretic, and a declared enemy to their republic. A theological justification for overthrowing Protestant or non-Catholic rulers.
There are even claims of justification for murder and theft that seem to defy conventional morality, attributed directly to Jesuit theologians in the appendix.
Yes, the list presented is quite extensive. Henricus is quoted. If an adulterous priest is assailed by her husband, kills the man in his own defense, he is not criminal. Amicus is cited. Priest may kill those who hinder him from taking possession of any ecclesiastical office. Escobar apparently states, it is lawful to kill an accuser whose testimony may jeopard your life and honor. Molina is quoted. Priests may kill the laity to preserve their goods, and Cardenas and Taberna are alleged to have justified servants secretly stealing from their masters if they judge their labor is worth more than the wages they receive.
And the obligation to truth itself seems to become conditional, based on these quotes presented by Brownlee.
Taberna is quoted asking, is a witness bound to declare the truth before a lawful judge? No, if his deposition will injure himself or his posterity, or if he a priest, for a priest cannot be forced to testify before a secular judge. These alleged moral precepts, as presented by the author, suggest an extreme interpretation of doctrine and loyalty attributed to the Jesuits, where self-preservation, the society's interests, and clerical privilege seem to override universal moral laws like honesty and the sanctity of life.
Finally, the document reminds us of those early historical judgments that seem to resonate with these alleged principles, bringing it full circle.
It concludes by noting that at a very early period after the establishment of the Order of Jesuits, the civil and ecclesiastical authorities of France proclaimed that the society was dangerous to the Christian faith, disturbers of the peace, and more fitted to corrupt than to edify. What's fascinating here is the sheer breadth and depth of these alleged principles, as presented in this single source, and how they connect directly, in the author's view, to the detailed strategies laid out in these secret instructions we just explored. Brownlee implies a direct causal link between these shocking moral maxims and the alleged practical manipulative strategies outlined in the secret instructions. One justifies the other in his presentation. #outro.
We've truly taken a deep dive today into the extraordinary and often deeply disturbing claims contained within W.C. Brownlee's 1857 publication, The Secret Instructions of the Jesuits.
Yes, quite a document.
From Loyola's initial vision, as portrayed here, to the alleged strategic manipulation of individuals, wealth, and power across entire nations, this document paints a chilling picture. An organization operating supposedly with layers of secrecy and a purported philosophy where the ends justify almost any means.
This historical text, whatever its ultimate factual accuracy, offers a really compelling insight into how the Society of Jesus was perceived, certainly by its fiercest critics, as this highly organized, relentless force operating with remarkable adaptability and this singular focus on achieving universal dominion, even if it meant deploying, highly questionable tactics and a very flexible moral code as detailed within this very specific source. The document clearly frames the Jesuit order for its contemporary readers as a constant underlying threat to civil society and traditional religious ethics.
It's a remarkable example of how historical narratives, especially conspiratorial ones, can shape our understanding of power and influence perhaps for centuries. As we close this deep dive, maybe consider this provocative thought. In a world still awash with information and disinformation, how do alleged secret instructions like these continue to resonate? Why are we still fascinated by them?
That's a good question. What does our enduring fascination with these kinds of hidden plans and secret societies reveal about our own anxieties? Our anxieties regarding hidden power, unaccountable control, both in the past and maybe even in the present.
These narratives, right, regardless of their historical accuracy, they seem to highlight this persistent human concern about power that operates in the shadows, and the lengths some people or groups are believed to go to achieve their aims.
They definitely invite us to question appearances, don't they? To consider what might really be happening beneath the surface. And that's a theme that, it remains incredibly relevant today.
Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive. We hope this exploration has given you a shortcut to being well informed about the contents of the specific controversial text and maybe sparked some new questions for your own deeper exploration.